Hi everyone, Alchemist Line here, and today we are going to take a look at the drop trap. Alright, so when it comes to traps, it's been a while, and the reason for that is because it's hard to find things that people haven't already covered on them, but I do want to complete this series. So I'm going to do my best to try to find things that might be a little different or just take a different outlook on some of these things. But I'm just going to want to show how these traps work and how I'm utilizing them. And, I'll link the videos that I've seen highlight them pretty good, and you can take a look at the variety and see what people are doing with them. Team Vash, Beast, they both have some good videos on drop traps, and then Mitch posted one showcasing exactly how good they were pre-nerf. So I want to kind of highlight all those videos because I don't want to take away from what other people have done before me. But again, this is just kind of taking a look, especially with this nerf now, and just how I still utilize these drops. Because even though they've been nerfed a bunch with this new update, their main function, and a function that a lot of people knew a year ago that are still pretty useful. The directional thing just became a recent thing we learned, and then I think as soon as we figured that out, the overpoweredness of these traps really came into scope, and I have a feeling that's what caused some of this nerf stuff to take place, because yeah, they're pretty good. So let's take a look. So the main drop trap that I use is an all durability 1 reload speed currently post nerf. Beforehand, I used to do a triple durability double reload speed, but because of the nerf and because I'm not using it the same way now, that single reload speed and extra durability is actually quite handy when utilizing the drop traps for their intended purposes. You could even take out that reload speed and go all durability to really make these last. Especially if you're doing a spread of them. I find in the cross spawns of Canny, for example, this is a great spot for an all durability build. The main thing you want to consider when doing something like that, though, is making sure that nothing past this is going to need that crowd control, because you're going to see that these tires will probably eliminate or wipe out a lot of that count by dropping. And then lastly, I have a blue one. Now I leveled this up 5 levels more than I should have, but basically what this is it's maximizing the durability and minimizing the damage and keeping it really low damage so that you're not setting things off like propane, but you're still getting that stun and impact of the trap. So it has definitely its uses in endurance as well as regular missions, but generally you want to have it a little less leveled than I do, that halfway mark between the tiers, where I kind of just maxed it out and didn't scale it. But it still does its thing. You get a good amount of durability for the lower damage when you have them blue like this. Alright, so my other drop trap here, it's a fully damage drop trap. It's the double crit rating, double crit damage durability drop trap, and you'll notice that 46% of the time this thing is hitting for 1500 damage. So it's a great option if you're just going for straight up damage and not really concerned about durability. These are great in your regular missions and things like that, with limited functionality in an endurance, but they're still highly effective. So the first thing when you're dealing with the drop traps is you got to keep in mind they are directional. So when you place them, you want to be kind of looking the opposite direction that you want the husks to be pushed. Because the other thing about these drop traps is that they have an impact and knockback to them, so they count as part of the crowd control feature, and you want to maximize what you're getting, the benefit you're getting from them. So this muffler is pointing in the direction that the trap will push. So if a husk was to walk here, it would kind of get knocked back here. The other thing is these drop traps, they can go 1 high, you can have them set 2 high, like that, or we can even have them set 3 high, like that. And depending on the height will depend on how much damage that they're going to do. as well as how far these tires will kind of get knocked around. Because if the tires are bouncing around, they kind of do what the cannonballs do in the broadsides, and they give extra impact and damage as they fall around. And you'll notice when they drop from the one high, they're really just sticking into that one spot, where when they're too high, you'll notice that they spread out a little more. And if you can get them on these cliffs and such, they'll drop down and they'll really do damage for anything falling behind. And that's why they're really good, is because you can get a lot of husks hit, and there's no limit to the amount of husks that these will impact. So it's a good way to deal with good crowds, and that's why when they did the crowd control nerfs, these really got hindered and hurt, because the crowd control aspect of these traps are really where it's at. The damage is only minimal compared to some of the other traps that we have out there, but the flexibility of having the 3 grades of height really is still beneficial, and that's why I find they're still a very viable option in endurances, as well as missions. And you'll notice he's already crowd controlled, so the damage, like nothing's impacting him now. I'll just kill him off. Alright. I have a group with me, and I'm kind of just bringing them through. And I'm going to see if I can see the impact. So you'll notice how he got pushed back there a little bit. That's that knockback I'm seeing. And you'll notice the too high one is hitting them even further along. So that knockback there that they're kind of being pushed back on, that is that crowd control feature that used to be very handy. Now it can be handy, but it has to be used in certain instances. And you'll notice that because the crowd control, if they get hit a few times, the traps are basically null and void afterwards. And that's what we're going to do, is we're basically just going to let them be nerfed or be locked and then see what happens from there. So you see that when the traps are hitting them now, they're still doing the damage, but they're not being pushed around at all anymore. And all other traps now won't work because of that. So if we put the freeze trap there, none of these guys are getting frozen. Except for the shielders, that's funny. But yeah, they can walk on that freeze trap all they want, and they will not be impacted. And that's really what crowd control does, is it makes any of those crowd control features, knockback, freeze, anything like that, ineffective. But the damage still helps. So it's good to have these maximized, and I'll see if I can get that done, because you'll see the numbers. So that's 3,000, 7,000, 3,600, 55... and then 11,000. So as you see them going through there, you see the numbers start to increase, and that's because the height determines the damage output. So one of the ways you can use tires is for cycling and holding things back. It's short-lived, but it has its function. And you can use other traps in conjunction with that to kind of help counteract some reload issues if you're having a, like say for example you have wall launchers here and husks have gone over and activated them. You can utilize these as kind of like a safety net, or a dual functioning tool where you're hitting them with some damage, but you're also cycling them at the same time. So we'll kind of demonstrate that. I'll bring some husks through and show you how this works. Alright, so I got some friends here coming along. And I'm just going to take them through this. And basically they're just going to get knocked down. And of course there's a patrol also arriving at the exact same moment. So you'll notice they get kicked back and then pushed off. See, so when that's done, these guys will get knocked, hit back, and then knocked off the cliff. And then they have to kind of go around and do it all over again. Now there is a limitation to how many times, because the 5 count, but it is effective. And see, they've already lost it, because between the tires and the freeze trap, that was all it took to get rid of their nerf. So that's why they have limited functionality now, but if you work it, you can still kind of find ways to utilize them. The other thing they're really good at is that stun and impact knockback is really good with propanes, and that's why I still use these in a lot of my endurance builds, because you can help kind of counteract some of the propane damage by implementing them at the start of your spawns and tunnel systems. And I'll show you that now. So you'll notice, taking a look, we're in Twine right now, and just kind of going around my entire base setup, you can kind of see these little ears poking out almost everywhere. And they are basically my drop trap. I use one drop trap at basically the start of almost every tunnel system in Twine. And this is basically just to negate some of the propane. So I'm hitting them with stun impact so they're backing down and they can't throw. And then I'm hitting them with speakers at the same time. And that is kind of helping counteract their effects. Because the drop trap, and you'll notice the muffler pointing the direction I want them to go. So on that ledge when I was pushing them off, I was kind of looking this way when I placed so that the pushback was knocking them off the edge. But essentially, the drop trap is being utilized in a way where it's kind of pushing things back a little bit, knocking the propanes, stunning them. The music is going off, so things are going to be dancing. And that way it gives a chance for my damage to start really hitting them and doing their thing without risk of losing this to propaners. And then it's not hitting them so much that by the time they're here, they don't freeze, so they'll still freeze here. And that's kind of the thing, is to try to find a way to balance them. But I found that the drop traps, even though it's greatly reduced from where I used to use them, because before, especially in a video, I'll link Mitch's video on drop traps because it's highly effective in seeing kind of how they were pre-nerf. But I used to use these all the time. They were kind of almost overpowered in a way, which is probably why the nerf took place. But at the same time, it opened up a lot of doors to be able to do some cool things with them. Yeah, it'd be kind of nice to be able to use them to their full potential again. But for now, I still find they have a function and a purpose to serve, and this is how I use them mostly. If I'm going in regular missions, I'll kind of use that cycling trick occasionally with them, but for the most part I'm using them not so much for their damage but for their effect on the propaners and having that stun kind of at the start of a tunnel system, and it does help filter out some of those smaller husks, so I'm not using as much durability in the back end of the tunnels. So in Canny, aside from using them at the start of my tunnels and pushing them back kind of away from the tunnel system, I'm also using them in recycling setups. So I don't recycle a lot, but on this side I ended up sticking with kind of a dropping them down style build. So if they walk over here, it's basically just pushing them down so they have to walk over to my tunnel system. But I'm also using these drops, and you'll notice the muffler. So when I place this, I'm looking here and I'm placing that there. And that way when the tires go off, it's also pushing the husks down. So not only am I getting the wall launcher pushing them, but I'm also having that same thing take place with these drops. And if they manage to break through this speaker, which they generally don't, they have the same recycling here. So we have the wall launcher, and then we also have the drops pushing them this way. Alright, well that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time. Have yourself a great day, and I'll catch you around.